Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Here we have it, Thursday morning. It's been quite a long week for anyone invested in Bitcoin or the Bitcoin mining stocks. We're starting to see a little bit of life in the price of Bitcoin itself. We're going to be talking about some of these market dynamics, the number of Bitcoin that are currently held on exchange, and some of the current trends we're seeing, in addition to some big news out of Corz Scientific and an update on the hosting agreement between Soluna and Bitdeer. A lot to go through. Before we get into it, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these three Bitcoin mining stocks, how you're feeling about the sector overall, and your outlook as we move through Q1 into the remainder of 2025. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay, guys, so that's right. Thursday morning, an interesting week, Anthony. We took the day off yesterday. Even you and I's patience is weathering here. Difficult time for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. We've seen Bitcoin flirting once again with $98,000 US. However, the miners continue to struggle. We're going to be talking about that in today's video. Why is Bitcoin trading in such a unique and random way here? Who's selling this Bitcoin and why are the miners responding as they are? A lot to unpack, but a great opportunity to talk through some of these themes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday was a day to sort of like take stock. Not a great deal of news out. A couple of news items we'll cover today. Bitcoin price just not really doing very much at the moment. There's no negative news stories out there about Bitcoin. Everything's positive. More and more institutions are buying Bitcoin. The ETFs are still loading up Bitcoin. I'm not selling any Bitcoin. You're not selling any Bitcoin. So please tell us in the comments who's selling Bitcoin, because I don't know, what's affecting the price at the moment. And the miners, for every slight move in Bitcoin, they're showing a lot more volatility than they have in previous periods.
Most definitely. And unfortunately for us, volatility to the downside. So let's start with the easy part of this equation, Anthony, the who's buying Bitcoin. Then we're going to come on to the number of Bitcoin that are held on exchange. We've seen a recent jump actually in the amount of Bitcoin on exchange. So somebody is selling or preparing to sell Bitcoin. But let's start first things first here. Who's buying? We've seen a number of 13F filings come out here disclosing Q4 holdings for any of these asset companies with, I believe you said $100 million assets under management or more. We're seeing a vast array, Anthony, of all types of big money, smart money, pensions, hedge funds, piling into these Bitcoin ETFs and proxies. And interestingly enough, even some of the companies that have corporate governance against holding Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs are now reporting sizable holdings in the proxies such as MicroStrategy.
So yeah, we've seen a lot of companies buying into the space, and although Vanguard apparently doesn't allow Bitcoin ETF investment, it's certainly been buying stocks that are essentially proxy investments for Bitcoin, and the biggest one they've been buying into is MicroStrategy. So I don't know, I can't work out the reasoning behind that. There's so much against Bitcoin. ETF investment. Why would they go after a proxy stock that just literally buys Bitcoin and is valued based on its Bitcoin hodl? And if you look at its holdings in MicroStrategy, it's probably got something like 5% of the whole company in terms of value, for just over $4.5 billion of shares that Vanguard holds in MicroStrategy.
Yeah, you're totally right, Anthony. And if you look down that list from HODL 15 in terms of big institutional investors in MicroStrategy, again, some of the largest names in the financial world. Now, we've also seen other companies we're more familiar with in the Bitcoin mining space, like Cantor Fitzgerald, reporting their exposure as well.
Yeah, they've got out and been buying in the fourth quarter, so they've just released their exposure. They've got over 3.5 million shares of MicroStrategy. That's worth 1 billion. In terms of mining stocks, they also own 170,000, just over 170,000 shares of Mara Holdings, and they have just over 1.1 million shares of the ETF IBIT, which is the BlackRock ETF. So, significant amounts there. And yeah, this is just, one of many, many, many examples that we could show you.
Certainly is. So we talked about institutional buying throughout the year here. Another group of investors we've seen come on the Bitcoin scene lately is the Billionaires Club, Anthony. So we talked about this recently as it related to a quote from Michael Saylor saying it only takes a few of these individuals to start buying up $1 billion at a time for the price to really start moving. Now, Mexico's third richest billionaire or individual just came out saying Bitcoin should be at $10 million in his opinion. He can see 100x more return on this investment class. So we're starting to grab the attention of these bigwig investors or individual investors, I should say, Anthony. This could have a major impact on not only the supply, but price as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about supply for the last 12, 13 months as soon as the ETF started buying. And now we're seeing massive adoption by individuals of high wealth and other public companies out there getting into the space, buying ETFs, buying Bitcoin, buying stocks correlated to Bitcoin, like mining stocks. There's been no sort of like negative news about it. It's all positive, and you're quite right. It's only going to be a matter of time now before we see the actual demand for Bitcoin really rally, and the price will obviously follow that. It's just an imminent position to be in. This is just we're just touching the base. And if he believes 100 times more, then I'm happy with the investment in Bitcoin I have sat at the moment.
Yeah, most definitely. I'll take the 100x any day, Anthony. Now, the final group we have here is good old Michael Saylor and Strategy B. He is now working on raising an additional $2 billion to buy more Bitcoin. They've also recently increased their authorized share count, which would, I guess, be a precursor for future raises, ATMs, or convertible note offerings, Anthony. But this is interesting as all these big banks, institutions continue to pile money into Strategy. Michael Saylor himself is turning around, piling that money right back into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean he's basically got an actual really good strategy that he's using at the moment, has been using for the last few years, and raising this debt with effectively, zero interest in terms of these qualified investors who are allowed to buy this type of convertible note will not be receiving any interest on that debt for the duration. And these convertible notes run until 2030. Now, I believe the expectation is that they'll want obviously the share price to appreciate, so they'll get a good return between any time between now and then. So they'll get a return their investment, but there's no interest associated with this. And even where there has been interest in the past, it's been such a small amount of interest in terms of percentage terms. He really has cornered the market in doing this type of investment by raising this type of debt and buying Bitcoin, and he makes no hidden agenda about it. This will be used for corporate services, which will include the buying of Bitcoin. So his full intention is to buy Bitcoin with the 2 billion and increase that hodl to a size. At the moment, he's only bettered by the likes of the BlackRock IBIT ETF, which has over 500,000. But strategy is certainly gaining close on having 500,000 Bitcoin itself within its own hodl. So very well sat there. And imagine if the price does rally, even if it rallies 10 times or even 20 times, think of the stock valuation then of Strategy as it's valued at the moment between sort of like 85 billion. We're going to see some big movements, and it's already achieved status by being in the top 100 stocks on the S&P. So it'll start moving up there. It's also one of the most traded stocks on a daily basis, along with the likes of Apple and Microsoft. So a lot of interesting strategy, a lot of people using the various types of investment opportunities that by holding that stock in different forms brings to the market. And yeah, this is just another one of those good updates there. Buy more Bitcoin. The retail investment market pretty much like that strategy from them. We know some of the miners have also tried to do the similar strategy, but I don't think it's as appropriate for miners to do that as it is for strategy to actually formalize that with a continued raising of these convertible senior notes.
Yeah, it was interesting, almost a flash in the pan as Bitcoin surpassed 100,000. We saw a bunch of the miners look to mirror that strategy. However, they have seemed to taken their foot off the gas there, Anthony, as you say, and go back to regular mining operations. Now, interestingly enough, we've put together a great case for who's purchasing Bitcoin, whether you hold strategy or not. It's great that Michael Saylor is going out there. He's purchasing up supply. However, if we look at the amount of Bitcoin held on exchange now, interestingly, this has been trending down for months and months, Anthony. We've reported on it a number of times on the channel. However, you can see in the last 7 days an increase of 7,100 Bitcoin throughout all of the exchanges worldwide. And if you look at a 30-day, nearly 50,000 additional Bitcoin have come back onto exchange. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with the FTX distribution, if they're loading Bitcoin back on exchanges to start selling it to pay people out, or if maybe there's some other component of this, but you can see the direct correlation, Anthony. The yellow line here is Bitcoin price, and as soon as that increased supply comes back on exchange, obviously having an impact on the price of Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, as we can see from the last sort of year, the Bitcoin balance has dropped from February 2024 all the way down to literally last week by the tune of about 600,000 coins. And then we've just done a little spike there by 50,000 over the last sort of 30 days. And that could well be the addition of the FTX Bitcoin back on the exchange. But the way that Bitcoin's been purchased, we've just talked about, 2 billion that MicroStrategy are going to be purchasing in the next day or so. I mean, as soon as they make an announcement, effectively, they've probably gone out to the market and already bought it. It's like, you're just waiting for the confirmation to come through about how much Bitcoin they actually achieved. But that 2 billion will be utilized there. The ETFs are having far more green days than red days. So the inflows into the ETFs will eat that surplus up there really quickly. And then you're going to start seeing that graph go further down and down and down again. And so, as the supply of Bitcoin reduces, the price will, obviously increase. And at some point, people are going to start, wondering, I need a piece of Bitcoin because this is, now going to be a long-term investment and better to be in than not in. So when that happens, when we see people coming back into the space, we've seen a few retail investors start looking at other sort of markets, a lot of focus on the AI markets and the quantum computing markets, and lots of investment going into those areas. So a lot of people have made some short-term gains there. Maybe when they come back into the Bitcoin space, we'll also see this take account, and we'll see some of that Bitcoin come off the balance there and reduce it further. But I think this is a temporary blip here. We've got the most rest of the year as part of the bull cycle, and if you follow previous cycles, the bear cycle might not kick in until sort of the end of the year or beginning of 2026.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now. Yeah, you're most definitely right, Anthony. So, in summary, you guys, big money, smart money continuing to plow into Bitcoin. Overall, the amount of Bitcoin held on exchange is reducing dramatically in the last 12 months. However, we have seen that blip you referred to, Anthony. If you do have that long-term conviction in Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin, this supply-demand imbalance that you just explained, again, maybe taking a little bit longer than we would like, a good test of our patience, but we still are highly convinced that this cycle is yet to play out. Now, fast forward over to the Bitcoin miners, Anthony. You mentioned in the intro they've been correlated, unfortunately, very closely to Bitcoin, at least to the downside, even overreacting to the downside. So, as someone or both of us who are highly invested in this space, it's been a difficult few quarters. However, there is some relief on the horizon, so to speak. Difficulty adjustment, which we've seen trend upward throughout the year. We did see one reduction in the month of January. It looks like we may see a little bit of help there again this weekend.
Yeah, the difficulty or the time it takes to mine a block, the standard time it takes is 10 minutes. And at the moment, it's taking about 10 minutes and 25 seconds, which means that miners are finding it a little bit more difficult to get that number or to find that algorithm number within the space that's allocated, a 10-minute space. So when that occurs, the difficulty will be eased, so the difficulty will come down, allowing miners to sort of be able to find it within the 10 minutes, because that's the benchmark all the way through every block, 10 minutes. When it gets quicker than 10 minutes, the difficulty will increase, make it a little bit harder for the miners. So every time every 2 weeks happens, we see that difficulty adjustment, and like you say, as we get closer, the difficulty adjustment will be a little bit more volatile. So at the moment, just over 2% is coming down, but you can see that change quite quickly as we get closer and closer to the weekend, so the change is formally made. But it looks like overall we'll see a drop in the difficulty, which will be a benefit to the miners because that means they'll be able to effectively mine a little bit more Bitcoin. I've already explained on a number of podcasts the impacts of the difficulty over the last sort of 12 or 13 months. Miners were operating, well in January last year, the good miners were getting over 60 Bitcoin per exahash. Roll forward to January 2025, and the top miner in January achieved 18 Bitcoin. Now, the quick people out there, they'll realize, yes, but we had a halving. Yes, the halving was in April last year, and that accounts for a reduction from, say, 60 or 61 down to 30.5. But the difficulty also impacts production, and that's took a reduction from 30 or 31 down to 18, 17. And put that in percentage terms, that's like effectively having another difficulty in the same year. So, we saw the global hash rate increase from about 520 exahash all the way up to close to 800. It reached 800 a number of days, but I think the 7-day average was about 780. So when the global hash rate increased that significantly by 50%, you can expect production to have the adverse effects of that, a reduction of Bitcoin. And we've seen that in the mining stocks now. That's why we've been focusing on, telling you about, the miners with the best fleet efficiency, the lowest energy are going to be the ultimate winners in this game. And, the likes of IREN's results that came out last week prove that fact. I mean, effectively, they produced a profit through mining. CleanSpark, who have got the second best efficiency, but not quite as good an energy cost, didn't make a profit on their mining itself. They made a loss on the mining. But overall, they came out with a net income because they were allowed to add the unrealized gain of their Bitcoin hodl in accordance with the latest FASB rule changes, which allowed them to add $260 million to their income statement, thereby taking away a potential $14 million loss, which they would have had they not been allowed to use that unrealized gain, and come out with a net income of 246 million. So We're waiting now for a lot of other miners to release. Next week's going to be a really big week in terms of miners, in terms of Marathon, in terms of Riot, in terms of Cypher, in terms of Bitdeer. So we're going to be covering majority of those whilst we're in New York, and coming back with the relevant data in a format that you can easily identify and compare with those miners that have already released, like CleanSpark, like Hive Digital, like IREN.
Yeah, that'll be great. Those comparative tables really help out. We're going to come on to New York in a second here, but you mentioned a couple big important pieces there, Anthony. So we talk about the frustration, the patience required in this sector, also the volatility. Agreed that we're in a bit of a holding pattern. We're waiting on further direction for this federal strategic Bitcoin reserve. We're waiting for one of these states to come out and start buying Bitcoin, one of these countries, one of these billionaires. So a little bit of a holding pattern that we're in right now. However, as they say in investing, it's 5% buys, 5% sells, and 90% waiting. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer, Anthony. However, our conviction for both Bitcoin and the miners is unwavering and giving us the opportunity to buy lower for longer. So the next point you mentioned there, Anthony, New York, we're obviously heading out there for Bitcoin Investor Week. This is going to be a great event. We're kicking off the week on Monday with a dinner at PubKey and then some very notable speakers, both from the political realm and from the Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining space. So this should be a great action-packed week.
Yeah, I mean, you've already, highlighted in previous podcasts. Antti Scaramucci is going to be there. Jan Van Eck, the CEO of Van Eck. Cynthia Loomis, who's been an advocate for getting the strategic Bitcoin reserve on the table at Congress level. Caitlin Long, founder and CEO of Custodia Bank. Jack Maulers, well, we've seen Jack Maulers at pretty much most of the conferences we've been, as we have with Adam Back as well. Adam Back, effectively the one of the OGs in the Bitcoin space, and many others. In terms of people that we're interested in also seeing there from our perspective, Jason Les is going to be there. He's the CEO of Riot Platforms. Fred Thiel, CEO of Mara Holdings, and a number of others. Natalie Brunel, who I know that you've managed to have a few conversations. I think she's been on your podcast as well, Bryce. She's going to be attending there as well. So it's going to be a great amount of speakers. Looking forward to the 5 days of the conference and catching up with a lot of people out there.
We certainly are, and continuing our quest to get power mining branding across the world. We're going to go down to Wall Street, Anthony, take some photos with the big golden bull there. Now, on to the miner-specific news. You mentioned there was some updates. Core Scientific came out with some news yesterday. We'll come on to that next, but we did get an update actually today on the hosting agreement between Soluna and Bit Digital. So always interesting to me, Anthony, when we see multiple miners interacting like this. However, we know Soluna does some great work. We know Bit Digital obviously hosts their mining fleet, and a great opportunity for both of these companies.
Yeah, it's a good update. Now, this is not a surprise to most people because Soluna have been hosting Bit Digital for quite a while. But what this tells you is that partnership's going really well, and they've expanded it now with another 5.5 megawatt hosting deal. And that's going to take them up to 12 megawatts. Now, they started with 4.4 at Project Sophie back in November 2023, and now that's increased to 12 megawatts. And this latest deal brings in the sort of like the next generation S21 mining units to Project Dorothy, which we spoke about, alongside electrical upgrades to improve the efficiency of the miners. Now, from Soluna's perspective, it's a great contract for them to increase, and it emphasizes the commitment and sustainability and the performance of the company. And from Sam Tabar, the CEO of Bit Digital, it highlights the move as a key step in optimizing its mining operations. I mean, it had notice on its previous host client. Now it's managed to raise its hosting agreement with Soluna, 12 megawatts, and Bit Digital at the moment 1.6 exahash, looking to grow to 3 exahash this year. So not totally moving away from the mining space like a number of other miners have already highlighted. Bit Digital keen to not only grow but grow and improve efficiency. And if you remember, when we had John Belazaire on the podcast, John was telling us about the ability for Soluna, albeit in terms of market capitalization, one of the smallest miners that we cover in the public sector. Um, we know that they've got access to really, really cheap energy and renewable energy. And John was even sort of saying around about the 3 cents. Now, anyone that's achieving 3 cents is, top of the game. So even for the likes of Bit Digital, by getting that energy cost and paying a hosted fee as well, so there's a nice, there'll be a margin there for Soluna. It's going to be, I would expect, a reasonably good deal for Bit Digital as well. Bear in mind, they don't have to go out and buy these big facilities. They just have to have a client who can operate on their behalf and produce good operational updates. And the price, obviously, really important. We can't stress your biggest cost in any mining operation is the cost of energy. But Soluna, have access to some of the cheapest power of all the mining companies. And it will be interesting to see the results when they come out from both Soluna's perspective and from Bit Digital's perspective to see that they've both been enabling to and both get a win out of these type of deals.
That's what I was going to say. Reminds me of that win-win that we heard Ben talk about in relation to the Bitfarms Hive deal in Paraguay. So great. Congratulations to both groups on today's announcement. Now, the one yesterday came from Core Scientific. I'm guilty of this as well, Anthony. We've talked so much about the CoreWeave deal, this monster contract in 2024, oftentimes forgetting there's so much else going on at Core Scientific. So this is another expansion into the HPC sector, but this time in Auburn, Alabama.
Yeah, so this is an expansion, and it's looking, I think it's a 16 megawatt expansion, HPC, and the potential for further expansion there. So Core Scientific is, making an initial investment of about $135 million in the facility, and the total investment is expected to exceed 400 million. I mean, we talk about Bitcoin mining infrastructure and the cost of, filling a Bitcoin mining facility with mining machines. That pales into insignificance when you compare that to what HPC costs. And we already know from speaking with the likes of Dan Roberts and from Sam Tabar, who have been, quite open and transparent with regards to their costs in delivering the HP service in both of those areas, and also with the likes of Aidan Killick talking about Hive Digital. These are three companies that are delivering, HPC using their own GPUs. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's quite, an expensive deal. This looks like, Core Scientific are going to be, effectively, covering most of the costs here, but also they're going to get some of the capital expenditure from future partners. So it looks like they're having some sort of similar deal that they've got with the likes of CoreWeave at the moment. And, having that deal under your belt, I assume for Core Scientific, it makes future conversations that little bit easier because they're already sort of like an organization that have been seen to achieve. They haven't just moved into HPC. They've been delivering HPC hosted facilities for many, many years, all the way back to when CoreWeave were mining Ethereum and Core Scientific were managing their facilities. So, proven track record. Expect, more and more announcements. 16 megawatts to start with, but potentially that can be grown. And all the staff at this facility are going to be part of the Core Scientific family. So that's an extra, 11 full-time employees. And there's a plan to increase that to a minimum of 20 full-time employees. So more and more opportunities for people in the local area potentially to gain employment. And that's what a lot of these miners bring to these remote sites sometimes. You've seen a lot of industries fall by the wayside over the last, few decades. And Bitcoin mining has delivered significant amounts of revenues into states. I saw an article the other day in terms of Texas, over $4 billion has come into state through Bitcoin mining. So, massive amounts of investment, massive amounts of opportunities for people to reskill and work at these sites and grow with these companies. It's a very, very positive industry.
Yeah, it certainly is. So we'll be continuing to wait and see on that expansion news from Core Scientific. The other thing we're going to be waiting on, Anthony, is this Bitcoin powder keg we've been sitting on to finally explode. Again, holding right below 98,000 as we close out today's podcast. But as we've seen in prior cycles, you guys, when these miners take off, they move very rapidly, seeing multi-digit percentage gains day after day. So we will continue to wait. We'll keep you guys posted on any big current events. And as we say, next week, traveling to New York, but continuing to put out those earnings interviews with Bitdeer and Riot on the agenda for next week. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.